What's up guys, Lisa of Borderlands Bakery here, and today we're going to be playing around with royal icing and palette knives. A couple weeks ago I was at Satellite Beach, Florida teaching a palette knife class over at the Florida Academy of Baking. Much thanks to Rory and Angela for having me. It was so much fun. If you guys want to see pictures of that, we'll link you guys down below. If you're in the Satellite Beach area or Orlando and Miami area, check them out. They offer a ton of baking classes, experiences, and even cooking classes. It's an incredible time, perfect for date nights or if you want to just go and learn something. In this video, we're going to learn how to use palette knives with royal icing. Now, palette knives are really common in painting, and it's been recently very popular in buttercream cake decorating. Buttercream is really different from royal icing, which is my preferred medium, and it behaves very, very differently. So I want to talk about some of the differences between working with buttercream versus royal icing and how that affects your royal icing palette knife designs. This is a set of palette knives we're working with today, and I actually sell them in my shop, so head over to borderlandsbakery.com if you want to buy a set. I chose these specifically because they're some of the smallest knives you can get, and when you're working on like a small surface such as a cookie, you need smaller knives. One of the most important things when it comes to using palette knives with royal icing is the consistency of your royal icing. Royal icing tends to crust really quickly depending on your environment and if you have any airflow going, but the consistency we're looking for when using palette knives is this loose toothpaste consistency. It's really important to get your consistency right. That way, when you're using your palette knife, it'll hold its shape, but also not be so stiff that it's really hard to deposit on your surface or it just gets stuck on the knife and never comes off. And if it's too runny, it's not going to hold its shape, and that kind of defeats the point of using palette knives. So look carefully at the consistency of the icing. All the icing that I'll be using with the palette knives is going to be this consistency. When you're working with royal icing, because it crusts over so quickly, I recommend keeping these in either a piping bag and just squeezing out whatever amount you need at the time, or reconstituting any dried or crusted over icing with just a little bit of water and mixing it back in with your palette knife to get your desired consistency. If your icing is too loose, you can always add more powdered sugar, and if your icing is too thick, add water just a little bit at a time until you get it to the desired consistency. You're also going to want to use a palette or another like flat surface of any kind so that you can work your icing. I like these palettes. I get them from Amazon. I will link you guys in the description box. When it comes to using palette knives, it's really important to learn how to move and maneuver your palette knife, as well as how to properly load the product onto your palette knife and deposit it onto your surface. First thing you want to do is actually just play around with your icing and get a feel for how your palette knives operate. Put a little dollop of icing. I have just about a tablespoon. I've got my palette knife here. I'm using knife number 23. Boop. You'll notice that these knives are very flexible. Can you see that? And this is going to come in handy when you deposit and maneuver your icing around. All of your palette knives are shaped a little bit differently, and they're different in length and width. But the important thing is we've got the edge down here, and as you push your palette knife around, you're going to be pushing product around, turning it, and keeping that edge flush with your surface and pushing it this way. So you're always keeping the edge of your blade flush with the surface. How I'm holding the palette knife is not like a pen and not like when I'm piping, but as if I'm going in and going to shake somebody's hand, but I'm securing it with my thumb and my, what is this finger? Index finger? As I'm pushing the product around, I have my palette knife angled at about 60 degrees. So if we look from this side, this is flush. This is angled about 60 degrees. This is 90 degrees. When I'm pushing product around, I'm always angled at about 60 degrees. So I move this way and this way. So if we're gonna get a little bit of product, I'm just gonna grab some, and you just want to get used to the motion of pushing the product around. Keep it in mind you're at that 60-degree angle and you're rotating your palette knife And you can see how the product is sort of rolling in onto itself. You'll know if you're doing it right if you're not leaving a lot of product behind on the surface of your palette. So if you see your palette like this, you're not really getting the product loaded onto the tip of your palette knife. You want to see most of that surface clean. So get used to that motion, get used to playing around with your medium, and your icing will dry out. So put a little bit of water, a couple drops, and mix it back into your icing to get it reconstituted to this loose toothpaste consistency. So you can see I'm at a 60-degree angle, I'm pushing it, and then I'm turning my hand over and turning my palette knife over and pushing it this way. This will help create a nice bit of icing to be able to deposit later. And you'll know how much icing you need because we're looking to put enough product on there so that there is an even amount of product in the center and it kind of tapers down, sort of evenly on both sides. So if we look at it from the side, this is what it looks like. And I have product loaded all the way up to, from the tip to the end of my palette knife. Now, when you want different looks, you can load up product to only about half the palette knife. So I'm gonna wipe it off, and you can load to about half the palette knife. You can play with the amount of product it takes to get there. So that's a less amount of product, you'll get a different look. But the idea is to get uniform amount of icing loaded across the center of the palette knife and that it tapers down evenly on either side. So this is going to be really key when you're working with palette knives. Doesn't matter what shape it is, if you want a nice even petal or deposit of icing or buttercream, you want to make sure you load your knife properly. Now that you know how to load up your palette knife, the next thing you want to learn is how to deposit these petals or designs onto your surface. Because these are flexible, you're going to want to take advantage of the flexibility of the knife. And when you're depositing, we're going to use like a U shape to lay down each petal. And I'm really using like my elbow and my wrist to kind of help me create that perfect petal. Always have an eco towel handy, a little damp reusable towel. You can also get these on our website, but you want to make sure that your knife is relatively clean when you're starting and ready to deposit your icing. So first thing you want to do is load up your palette knife, get rid of any excess, roll it back and forth until you get a uniform amount of icing loaded onto your palette knife. That looks pretty good. And you don't have a lot of gunk on the other side. And then you're going to deposit your petals or leaves using a U motion. So starting at the bottom, look at how I'm holding it, kind of like a bow. If anybody plays violin or cello, you're going to lay down the end, press down, apply pressure so that it adheres, and then roll it, and then pull out and up. And then you get a petal just like that. Depending on what knife you use, you'll get a different look. And immediately you'll see that the tips are such different sizes and shapes, as are the lengths. The set that we offer in our shop has a good variety of them, so you could get a bunch of different looks. For a long knife like this, take your time rolling your icing back and forth until you get enough of it onto your palette knife, making sure to cover as much of the length as you desire. I did about 75%. You can even push your palette knife a little bit forward and then backward to get a little bit of a sharper point in the front. And if we use a different knife, but we only load up the tip, you'll yet again get a slightly different look. We got a little bit of an edge here, but no problem. It's good to clean off your palette knives. So get really used to the motion of getting your knife loaded up and depositing your leaves or petals. And that was a crash course of how to use palette knives with Royal Icing. If you guys have any questions or comments or curiosities, let me know in the comments below and we will make sure to answer or address in a future video.